While the Iron Age began around 1200 BC, it was not until the 16th century that wrought iron began to be used for decorative purposes. Blacksmiths worked and manipulated iron to create various tools, weapons, and structures for man's architecture. Today we know this material as wrought iron, wrought being a derivative of the word worked. Wrought iron became an architectural detail distinctive to the 20s land boom in Palm Beach. Spanish Mediterranean homes, popularized by Meisner, used decorative wrought iron for the gates and the doors, for railings and for brackets, and even for furniture and light fixtures. Wrought iron fell out of favor as a building material due to the fact that it was easy to rust and also the creation of milled steel. Today there are materials that can be used to substitute the look of wrought iron for ease of modern building, such as aluminum. But the craftsman's techniques handed down from blacksmith to blacksmith still remain relevant to our landmark buildings. And so we're at Reich Metal Fabricators, which is right here in the area of West Palm Beach where Addison Meisner Industries once existed. Actually, we're right here on the same parcel. John Childs is our host, and he's the owner of the company.
Nice to meet you, Bob. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for letting us in. So we understand that, Palm Beach Meisner houses and many other houses really depended on the craftsmanship of wrought iron and bronze for the decorative detailing that went into some of these houses. But much of that would have rusted away after a century. And so you guys for decades have been making similar products in aluminum, right?
Aluminum, yes. Everything is aluminum. Since the 50s, aluminum became prominent. It's been used. We do mainly 90% aluminum work with some 10% bronze.
Yeah.
But this is a aluminum railing that looks to be an authentic iron railing. We distress the metals and a bar stock material, and then have a painted finish to give it an old rustic look. This is an old Addison Meisner piece. You can see finish-wise and look-wise, the material-wise, it looks to be authentic.
This would have, the twist and all this detailing would have been hand-wrought
handmade
here at the old Meisner workshops. But now you're still making the same kind of look.
Yeah.
And for example, on the wall back here, what are all these components? Are these things that are made here?
Decorative spindles. Some are made here. Some of the twisted spindles are made here. This simulated rope was made here. Some of these spindles are purchased with a bronze cap we get from a component system. These are some old steel spindles. And some of these are castings that we buy out of a book, depending on if for newel posts or interior railings or exterior railings. It's actually a solid bronze picket we did for interior stair railing. And this is a handmade one. So it's a combination of things we've done over years and purchased we just put up there for a display.
Sure. Before we go out to see the workspace, what's the deal with this anvil? That is a beautiful thing.
This was an original anvil. It's probably well over 100 years old. It was one of the working anvils that Addison Meisner's iron shop used.
Yes.
It was in the back. You can see it's on a stump, the hand straps. You can see the marks, the chisel marks that were made. So we brought this inside to preserve it and just as a showpiece to show people. We actually have a working one in the back we'll show you.
Well, let's go out into the factory floor.
Okay. All right.
So John, before we go outside, I know you've got memorabilia here that dates back to when Fred Rich took over from Meisner. So much of what was Meisner's industries here moved with him, or other people took over.
Right.
And so that's when Mr. Fred Rich came.
Yeah, Fred took over the iron shop. He worked for Addison Meisner in the iron shop. He became Rich Ornamental Metals.
And of course, we're looking at
this building we're in now. In fact, that's only half the building. And then he built the other half of the building in the later half of the 50s before he died.
Yeah, this looks to be early 50s judging by the car. And it's of course what we call a Quonset hut.
Yeah.
And we all know that they came out of Quonset, Rhode Island. Let's go on the floor. Okay, so John, before we look at things being made, let's talk about the raw material. This is all aluminum, right?
Yes, sir. It comes from a local supplier, but they buy it from the mills, which could be anywhere locally or around the country. This is a tubing material we use for a lot of framework.
So tubular stock is almost like a wooden 2x4, except it's aluminum.
Yes, sizes are actually, if this is a 2x3, it's 2x3. We don't use anything less than an 1/8 inch material. Some structural items will go to a 1/4 inch wall in different sizes. It comes the same, like a 3 inch, 2 inch increments, whatever we need.
Sure.
And then bar stock, depending on what we're doing, solid pickets, or if we have to bend anything or any shapes, it always is a solid material.
Yeah, and you're not just making staircase railings, you're making doors and gates.
Everything, doors
Yeah,
and gates
yeah.
and railings, pergolas.
And this looks like it's bronze.
Yes, we do. They say we do partially some bronze work. This is a solid 3/4 bronze bar. We're using also, that comes in tubing. So that comes tubing and solid bar also, depending on what we're using it for.
If an architect specs iron, what do you do?
I tell them they don't do it anymore, and we spec aluminum.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that they want to look like wood, they'll put 3.5 instead of 4. I have to correct the sizes. And
But what's in this crate over here?
some of the stuff we do, this is steel. We're doing an interior railing in a local home, and they'd send a photograph of a railing which we want to reproduce. So we bought these spindles from France.
Oh, okay.
They're they're steel turnings. They came from France, and they're going to be put together as a unit, and they're going to work their way side mounted to the steps up and all the way around the staircase.
Cool. Well, let's look at some of the other stations in the process.
Okay.
So John, I'm looking at tools that are familiar to any woodworker. A radial arm,
Yes.
a chop saw.
Yes.
Are these used on the aluminum?
Yeah, we just a carbide tip blade, the same blade you would cut wood with, are used for aluminum, just carbide tip blade. Cut through anything, and our bandsaw has a special tooth pattern to cut through aluminum so it won't build up.
Okay. And so over here, you're making something that looks like a Chippendale design.
Yes, these are some balcony rails for a local home in Palm Beach. And exactly what they want. You want to make it look like a wood Chippendale railing. So he started out, you're making the frame patterns first. Then you start to cut the pieces and insert the Chippendale pattern, and they'll be all welded into place, and then the weld sanded smooth. And then the railing framework will be built, and these will be inserted in the railing. For the posts, there's like certain sections, there's 2 patterns in a post and 2 patterns, so it'll.
And then the finished product here gets painted with a powder coating, right?
Yes, this will be powder coated, yes.
Not here in your...
Locally down the street, there's a powder coater.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what gives it its longevity.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
So the original Meisner metal shop was on this...
It's right here, you came right out, this it started right about here.
Yeah.
It was in this old part, and that's originally part of the original floor and the slab.
And what is this setup over here?
This was what's called a peg table, iron peg table, and this is what they used to bend the material back then. They would change these pegs out, move them around to wherever they wanted to, and fit here, and then take this template and put it where they want it, and they'd lock it in like this, so it would hold. And they'd use that big bar and put the aluminum in here straight and start prying on it.
The wrought iron, you mean?
Well, wrought iron back then,
Back
yes.
then,
I mean, we
yeah.
used it in aluminum before we bought rolling machines, actually.
Oh, you did?
We used it back in the 80s and the 90s before we had rolling machines.
Okay.
But this, back when it was wrought iron, they'd put it in there and they'd use that as leverage. They stand back there and they start working the material and bending it and bending it and bending it to where they had a roll of whatever they were doing.
Yeah, now it's a historic artifact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens back there?
Okay, that's the building. We have our gas forge in. There used to be a coal forge here they used back in the days. But now we have a gas forge, power hand. We turned it into kind of a little machine shop.
Okay.
Originally that was our paint shop. We used to do painting here, and when powder coating became prominent about 20 some years ago,
Yeah.
we turned this, when this building was falling down, we put all the equipment in here and changed this into a machine shop, and this is where all the detailing is done back here, the sanding of the welds and the conditioning of the metal, getting it ready to go to powder coat.
Okay. So John, what do you do with this machine?
This power hammer puts the distress into the metal to make it look more like the wrought iron.
So this does give it indeed the look of being hand hammered, and you
Yes.
can't buy the raw stock already looking like this?
No, you can't. There is, but it's consistent. It's an even scalp. This is, you can see as he was rotating it, he's trying to put different imprints in different sizes and shape, and there's things we can do to that tool to give it a different imprint.
Great.
And then you notice it's crooked, it has to be straightened out afterwards.
Now, I've always been curious, how do you twist a bar to make it look like that, kind of like a spiral?
We have a machine that does that.
Let's see it.
Yeah.
So John, this is regular stock, aluminum stock that has not been heated up yet.
No, regular bar stock. It's a 6063 alloy, which is the softer of the aluminum alloys.
And what I'm talking about is a twist. How do you do it?
Well, we put it in, we have a die here for this end. This is a 3/4 square bar, and this vise will adjust depending on how much we want to twist, and we lock it in there.
And here we go.
And then we just,
Fabulous.
we
Isn't
got a
that
nice
great?
twist.
Yeah. Yeah, so a century ago you would have been heating up the iron and doing something similar.
Actually, before we had a machine, I'm going back when I first started almost 40 years ago, we'd put this in a vise with a big wrench, and they'd heat it, and the guy would stand at one end and keep twisting it, and they would and try to keep the heat evenly so it would twist evenly. Then we developed this. This used to be an old threading machine, pipe threading machine. We kind of made this rig there and put it in there, and you see it work. So
And you can do 50 or 100, yeah.
yeah, and depending on the alloy. See, this one did a pretty consistent job.
Yeah.
But sometimes, depending on, we used to kid how many Pepsi cans are in there instead of Coke cans. Sometimes it'll twist tight and loose, or sometimes break.
Yeah.
So out of 100, we might lose 10%. But then just take this out when we're done, and you got a straight end. You got a straight end to build, putting the railing.
Beautiful.
You can feel it did get a little warm. It gets a little warm when
Sure.
it runs. Yeah.
No,
It's not hot. No, it's not hot.
Yeah.
It just gets a little warm as it starts to twist the material.
So John, it's such a treat to be able to come to the old Meisner Industries and the new Reich Metals and see that these traditions still live on.
You're
Thanks
very
for
welcome.
the tour.
I privileged meeting you. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.